Welcome back, everyone, to the Fluid Fan Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Angela Ruggiero, the CEO and co-founder of Sports Innovation Lab. As the global leader in market research for the sports industry, we focus on the fan. We're focusing on how technology is changing fan behavior and really empower our clients to make breakthrough fan experiences by using the best technology that aligns with their fluid fan. So we talk about fans on this, technology, innovation, where the puck is headed, so to speak, in the sports industry. I love bringing on guests to talk about what they're seeing as practitioners and really opine on what we've been doing for the last 4 years, collecting data and really defining what innovation means to the sports industry. So if you don't know us, we provide our clients with, again, groundbreaking, data-driven research through our advisory services, our custom data dashboards. We're analyzing the market on your behalf, and our invite-only leadership boards, which you get a lot of our amazing leadership board members on this podcast. So our research is there to help our clients understand which technologies are best suited to help their business, and really to help define which core behaviors matter most to their fans, their customers, their clients. We talk about that on this podcast. You're getting a little preview. But if you missed it yesterday, we actually released our latest report, the Fan Project Report, which is all about showing the industry the business case for investing in sports. Everyone's got an opinion on it. Of course I do. What if we used fan data to actually better understand that consumer? And we believe we've unlocked a completely new monetization model for women's sports, but sports holistically. It's our future fan. It's in there. It's all in the women's market, which is crazy. So if you want to read that report, our latest groundbreaking report, visit www.sportsilab.com. Check out thefanproject.co. Again, the Fan Project Report. It's about the community-based monetization model. The highest concentration of fluid fans are in the women's market, which is crazy. So we're going to have someone on today who knows that market better than anyone. Very special guest, Keia Clarke, the CEO of the WNBA's New York Liberty. So Keia is a friggin' marketing guru. She spent over 10 years with the Liberty before being named the CEO. She's earned her stripes. She's worked all across the league, the NBA side as well. You're going to hear her first-person narrative around what she believes the growth of women's sports is, the rise of fandom and viewership specifically within the WNBA. And she'll talk about her team, the new arena they're in Barclays Center, and their new ownership in Joseph Tsai, and much, much more. So we'll touch on our latest report on the Fan Project, how data is definitely going to be a driving force in the overall growth and investment in women's sports, and her take on her team, what they're doing right, where they're headed. You're going to learn a lot. So stay tuned. Let's get to it. Keia Clarke of the New York Liberty on today's edition of the Fluid Fan Podcast. Welcome back to the Fluid Fan Podcast. Today's guest is Keia Clarke, the CEO of the New York Liberty. Keia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Angela.
All right. You're amazing. I can't wait to talk about your career, what you're doing with the Liberty, women's sports in general, as you know, as a personal, not just passion, but something we're focused here on quite intensely at Sports Innovation Lab. But to kick things off, we always like to make sure that people know who you are. We have a broad variety of guests that come on the show. And you're someone that has a tremendous background, obviously extensive marketing background in the sports industry with, your time at the NBA Hall of Fame, Golf Digest, the NBA, and now the last 10 years with the New York Liberty. So walk us through your background, how you came to be CEO at the Liberty, and kind of your, if no one knew who you were, like encapsulate Keia Clarke. Hard to do in a sentence, but give us a flavor of your background.
Oh yeah, certainly. And again, thank you for inviting me on today. I always like to start, if you know nothing about me, the place I like to begin is really that I was an athlete. I grew up playing basketball, and really it was that sort of, passion, that commitment, that drive for the sport itself that very later on in life drew me to a sports career, but it didn't begin that way. So I like to start there. Like I started playing when I was 8.
All right. You're a baller. All right.
I'm a
What
baller.
position?
Point guard. I
Like
played point at
children.
I played point at Canisius College in Buffalo, New York. I realized really, really early on I was not going to play in the WNBA. And I was a marketing major. I envisioned that I would work in some corporate space in someone's place of business, doing some sort of marketing or consumer behavior. And really, it was just that general of a thought process. And upon graduation, I lucked up on this really cool opportunity to work at the Basketball Hall of Fame. I had grown up going to the museum, and then now I was like an account executive, selling groups the opportunity to come to the museum. And it was really at that moment that I was like, okay, I've sort of been avoiding this sports thing. I think I probably should be pursuing a sports career. And then at that moment, decided to go to grad school and get a master's in sports management. So that's what landed me in New York. And that really was the catalyst to what changed everything, because while I was in school, I worked at Golf Digest, and I was an assistant. I was an administrative assistant, new to New York, working at 4 Times Square. And they put me on an assignment with Golf for Women. And really, it was that like interest in, oh, well, different advertisers in Golf for Women, different strategy. They had an all-women leadership team of publishers who ran that magazine. And really, that's what drew me or led me to really start to research the WNBA and think about the WNBA as a career. So I really have to give a lot of credit to that sort of pivotal moment for me, and really looking at women's sports in a different light as an industry, and not, just as, I used to play women's basketball at that point in time. So from there, I actually wrote my thesis on the WNBA, having never been to a game. So my old coach introduced me to someone who worked there, and that's how I got the job. So I wound up spending about 4.5 years at the NBA, WNBA league office, really learning the ins and outs of team business, the ins and outs of, how you generate revenue, how you grow a fan base, how you market in this specific league. And then ultimately ended up at the Liberty, first as a marketing manager. I came in completely doe-eyed and eager to just do anything and everything I could do to help the team. And, it started as mainly marketing, and I just sort of grew in that vein and that vertical, if you will. And at the end of probably the 6th or 7th year that I was there, I was still doing the marketing, but so much of my day-to-day was encompassing operations. So as it turned out, the lead of the team actually had gone on to bigger and better things, and I was afforded the opportunity to oversee the business side. So it's been 21, I guess 5 years now that, I've been able to lead this team. And it's been a little bit of a bumpy ride, because we went through a team sale during that time, and we've moved arenas during that time. But through and through, the brand is the brand. The franchise has a long-standing legacy, and I couldn't be prouder, to be at, this point in my career, but specifically at this team in New York.
And you mentioned a sale. Joseph Tsai bought the team in 2019. I'm sure want to hear how that changes things, having an investor like him and his wife, Clara Wu, as well. Tell me, it's interesting you have that background, and you've been with the league at the league office, and then obviously on the team side. What's been the biggest change in the market over your time, both again at the league and now at the team level? And again, how do you approach the market with or approach your team with those market conditions changing in the back of your head? Like, I'm interested again, like what's the last decade, like how has women's sports changed? Like we're studying it every day with the FAM project and the Sports Innovation Lab, but you've been living it. What have you seen, and what do you get excited about? And maybe having a new owner could be a part of it, but I'm just curious, like where you're at.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And so much has changed. Like, and I'll start at something so mundane as when I began with the Liberty. I remember my then boss looked at me and she said, well, I've been manning Facebook and Twitter in the absence of your predecessor. You take Facebook, I'll take Twitter. Like, that was how minute the social landscape was. Like, it was only those two platforms. We were just doing, dare I say, kind of the 4 Ps of marketing. Like, it was just so rudimentary at that point. And that's really what has changed in women's sports. I think, technology and social media and, growth of the number of games on television has really changed how people can access this sport or women's sports overall. There's just this sort of unspoken, I think, constant growth pattern. And I really would say it leans toward equality. I think some of the things that has happened for individual sports over time has begun to bleed over into team sports, if you will. So, that's when you see a U.S. women's soccer team, demanding equal pay. That's when you see, hockey league starts in various, soccer leagues. And then you've got the WNBA with this growth sitting here. And I think everybody, we're saying it loud and clear, like, this is about equality. It's about equity. It's about investing at equal levels. And while I don't think that we're there yet, at least we're having a conversation. So over that time, I think those things are what really changed. But I have to go back to just the product. The quality of basketball has improved tremendously also over these 10 years, so that, there isn't a question about whether or not we deserve, corporate support, whether or not we deserve primetime, TV, whether we deserve media coverage. Like, all of those things, are deservedly so because it's there and there's a following and there's a movement. I often even look at one of the turning points being when Hillary Clinton ran for president. Like, everyone, all the feminists in the world were on the edges of our seats about it. And, a lot of good things happened in this league and for women's sports immediately after that, in my opinion. And, I can't help but celebrate and hope that it's a societal change at that point.
Yeah, I love it. You've teed up so well and you've lived it. Yeah, you've lived it. You've seen this massive shift, this transition. In our report, which we just published, if you haven't read it, download the Fan Project report. It literally says a lot of what you intuitively know, but that these macro forces between society leaning in and pushing and wanting more gender equality and racial equality, and there's an awakening happening. Technology, which in the last 50, 20, 10, 2 years has exponentially changed the landscape for women's sports. And at the same time, the athletes themselves have such a direct line to the consumer, are driving attention and media, and you have these big macro forces coming together that change the landscape. And that's so exciting for me, because you're at the vortex of that these fans now, these fluid fans, these future fans, are absolutely allowing women's sports to finally have its due course and lean in. And tell me then how that's translating into business and to sales. And we in the Fan Project, we'll talk a lot about that it's a new model, it's a new way to service these new age consumers that are specifically in the women's market, that have been forced into these digitally savvy, communities, not because we're, women's sports fans are, so hip with technology or social causes. Well, and social causes were hip, I'll give us that. But it's the technologies that allowed those voices to be heard, and that we understand this kind of these macro forces. So I'm just curious again, how, with all these macro changes, and we believe it just like you from a research perspective, and you're living it, how is it that then translating into revenue, into the business side of what you do?
Yeah, it changes the conversations completely. You go from trying to or attempting to, explain yourself or sell demographically, And instead, we're selling platforms, we're selling movements, we're selling what we represent within this society. So, that's a conversation that we never even, broached, 10 years ago. We didn't go in saying, well, we have a unity platform that really represents racial equality in a way that our players stand for it through and through every single day. Like, we have players who come to us and say, this is the way, I'd like to use my platform. This is what I want my legacy to be. This is what I want my impact to be. And we just get to support it. But then we get to take that and, demonstrate it in front of the fan base and educate the fan base in some regard. And then we get to go to a corporate partner and lock arms and say, well, if you're about this and we're about this, can we say it a little bit louder? Can we do it a little bit stronger together? And we still have a ways to go, I think, in connecting that mindset, that approach, that type of movement with the digital space. There's a lot of room for growth in this league. And as sometimes it takes investment, it takes money. And that's what, going back to, our new board of governors and Joe and Clara Rusai, there's unwavering support for us is really just about focusing on growing the fan base, focusing on doing it the right way, focus on building the brand back up. And I say that, transparently, we've had some hills to climb over these last 2.5 years, because it's not easy to move a team, to move a franchise, and albeit from Manhattan to Westchester or from Manhattan to Newark, we're talking about 20, 30 miles, but it's a totally different type of consumer and a totally different way to reach them, when you go those 20 or 30 miles, because the city's the city, which is why I'm incredibly happy about what our opportunity looks like. How do we connect all the dots now that we are in Brooklyn and now that we are in the heart of Brooklyn at Barclays Center?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think there's been visionaries like the Tsai family. It sounds like yourself. The WNBA is in its 25th season, by the way. Want to make sure people know that. Yeah. Congratulations. You guys are off to a killer start. I believe you have a record right now in terms of your win-loss. I mean, there's just this like inertia, and again, I'll take a step back. Not the entire industry hasn't seen the opportunity on the wall. And there are these visionaries, and maybe it's you and I who played and we're like, there's a freaking market here. You got to do it. You got to invest in it. You got to do it maybe differently than you do the men. You have to think about this consumer in a different way. You can't lift and shift the same thing. You got to grow your fan base. But our data is again going to back that, and it's in the report. What are the kinds of metrics that you're seeing that again are indicators of the traction in the market? We have what we're studying in terms of fan behavior specifically, but as you just said, your focus is on growing the fan base. Are there other things that you're looking at that are like, that's a really objective indicator that this market is taking off and that our fan base is really leaning in?
Yeah. Typically, I think we often default to ticket sales. And during a pandemic with limited capacity arenas, we're seeing arenas open up more. That's typically where I look, and not just generic, how many tickets did we sell? I'm looking at specifically when and where and how and what. So it's like, are we selling more, and what types of people are we selling to? Are we selling more on the weekends? And really, I'm talking about the single game buyer, not so much season ticket member. So that is leading and guiding sort of how we make decisions. Right now, like I said, it's a little bit more difficult because we haven't increased our capacity yet, but definitely on single game tickets, because that's, the casual fan. That's the person who did consume a piece of media. They did receive our advertising. They did see, everything that we're doing and we're flighting right now. That is, what I'm trying to use or attempting to use basically as, a indicator of where we're going. Media coverage is another one. As you said, like this inertia with the Liberty right now is so meaningful and so impactful, but we have to garner exactly what it is that is going to make this a mainstream every day it's covered. Like we've had a record number of New York Times articles in just the last week Good Morning America, 2 stories already just this season, and we're just starting. And then you've got, major writers writing about the women, the X's and O's, the off-court stories. Like those are all things that we've had some, anemia about, just being, on every ticker, if you will. So it seems really, really like archaic to say we're still going on media coverage, but coverage is something that I'm absolutely paying attention to. And I would be remiss if I don't look at streaming and television. Having a major TV deal with national partners like an ESPN, then you add in Amazon, and then you add in Twitter feeds, and then we have our local RSNs. Our games are on the Yes Network or the Yes app. So there's so many ways to consume now that I can't just be myopic about who is in my building. It's also like who is watching on the outside, because those people buy merchandise too. Those people are ultimately going to buy 2 tickets and buy 2 hot dogs and buy 2 beers, at some point in time, especially if we make this championship run. So I think more than anything, as the team as the on-court improves too, like that's where data is even more important, because you're starting to see, what this franchise has never been able to really measure and witness is what is the appetite for people to really jump on board and be with us forever. So those are the things that I'm looking at. And then, partnerships and who and the size of the deals is again, at the national level, we've seen some really major partnerships happen, and locally we're doing the same thing. We're just, growing dollars, growing revenue in that way. And I can tell you our ability to grow revenue at the Barclays Center is exponentially different than our ability to generate revenue when we were playing at the Westchester County Center. All those things matter. You know what I mean? And that's what, investment from ownership and support and sort of providing equity. They are really looking to, give us the tools and the resources that we need specifically to be successful. So I can appreciate, more being in that sort of position, especially because I have been with the team for so long.
Yeah. Well, it's coming around. You guys are going to, knock on wood, take the championship home this year. New building, as you mentioned, the Barclays Center. Your numbers are looking great. I believe opening weekend came back. Viewership was up 25%. I'm with you. I'm Super Bowl. I'm always interested in the data. Again, we try to push the industry forward with not just gut, but like data and insights. And a lot of the things you just described are definitely early indicators of that inertia in the market. You mentioned Google, or you mentioned key partnerships with the league office, Google being one of the most recent big wins for the W in that partnership. As you talk to partners, sponsors, as the league talks to partners and sponsors, and there's this, you talked about it before, that the teams, women's sports is bringing this societal impact. They're bringing more than just the, ad model. They're saying, look, an investment in us is more than just eyeballs. It's about values. It's about who we are. How is that resonating more specifically in the market? Because I wholeheartedly believe it's actually in our data and the fan project that the men are copying the women, no surprise out there. But it's been core to our research that fluid fans follow values. And if you see that outside of sports, even like I spend money on brands that reflect me, and I don't spend money on brands that are the antithesis of me. And so consumers are more savvy today. You mentioned it at a high level. Maybe you can dive a little bit deeper on this, because, I followed everything this last summer. I was a massive consumer of the W and what you guys did. It was amazing. How has that resonated with your sponsorship, your partnership, and then maybe abstract that at the league level?
Yeah, Angela, you said it. Like, I think this is something intrinsically we've always known as women who consume and women who consume sports. So it's kind of like, I think we did research in 2015 that showed the WNBA fan shows up for things that matter. Like, we had an entire campaign, Show Up, because we knew it was all value-based. We knew it was all psychographic-based. And that was really the genesis of like sort of where we are now 5 years later. or 6 years later. But the conversation, and I'll give you one prime example. Last summer, the summer of the WNBA standing for and hoping for and working toward justice for Breonna Taylor's family, and really committing to hashtag say her name and the work that the African American Policy Forum was doing, like that concerted bubble effort that they generated, opened everyone's eyes, I think, to not only like what the women are capable of, but it was really a resounding, like, this is where we've always been, guys. You couldn't really hear us before until all 144 of us got together and said it more clearly and more loudly. And then women learn a little bit about organizing. But I will tell you, from a partnership standpoint, never in these 16 years, when you add up my time with the team and at the league, had we had partners specifically approach us and say, we want to do the Liberty deal, but we want everything in the deal to be about women's equality, or we want everything in the deal to be about racial equality and these social justice issues. Like, that had never happened in our career. We had Nets partners who were Nets partners that we wanted to have conversations with say, this is going to be our foray into the Liberty. These are the conversations that are ongoing. It's a long sales cycle from a partnerships standpoint, but that's the really exciting part, because it's authentic. It's not that we're jumping on a bandwagon. We are one of the first leagues that, was celebrating LGBTQ plus pride. We are, just by definition of existing, representing for women, and primarily a league built of women of color. So, the issues, quote unquote, that we're discussing have always been a part of and resonated with these, part of who we are. So it feels really good to finally be out in the open and in a meeting, like literally saying
society caught up to the W is all I'm saying. Society caught up. So again, like, timing sometimes is everything. You've got society catching up to where you've already been. You got technology providing the access and distribution.
Yes.
And then you've got these athletes that are willing to stand up, to speak up and use their platforms for social change, for just as a vehicle. We talk a lot about athlete driven media as the future of sport. They are the distribution channel. They have the widest, you look at your followers, no offense, every team, every league is a fraction of what the athletes have. And I want to get into Sabrina Ionescu in a second, but like, again, they caught up to you. And I'm just so bullish on what you're doing, Keia, and your leadership, and because the timing is now. And yes, you got to win on the court. I get it. That drives sales and visibility. But like, overall, I mean, if I had money, I'd be throwing at the league right now. So it's smart investment. Gonna just throw it out there. Tell me about Sabrina Ionescu, though, just on that point, because again, athlete driven media, you've got one of the biggest stars in the league, just had a killer, 0.4 seconds, won the game, is just, again, crushing the expectations on her. I think she's delivering, hit an amazing game winning shot on opening night. And for those of you that don't know, first overall draft pick, even though she got injured next year. Tell us about how you're using your athletes, because it sounds like they've pushed the league in a positive, pushed the team in a positive, and are one of those three, again, forces, I think, really elevating the W and the Liberty in particular.
Yeah. Well, first off, I have to say Sabrina is special. I think we all have had witnessed what she meant to the collegiate game, and then now in what I'll call basically her first season. She only played 2.5 games in the bubble season. So a special player like that, someone who demands so much notoriety and is so mainstream and versatile, there's so much respect for her game and so much following and, investment from an endorsement standpoint. Like, none of that, we're just reaping the benefit of that, quite honestly. And it's amazing. I think, from how we're using the players and their platforms, it really it's remarkable, because it starts when they're in college. So they come to us already with that following and with sort of how they're going to present personally. And we have to be cautious and recognize that those are their personal platforms. So more often than not, it's really an amplification of the things that they're doing but more sort of drawing them into what our programs and activations and platforms are. And then it's like, you know, they're sharing out together. So we are very careful not to infringe upon, you know, what their personal platforms are saying and doing, but instead creating and curating from the Liberties, you know, handles from our organization, kind of how and when and who will use our players. For example, we've done some custom videos where, you know, scripted, where we meet, we talk about it. This is the direction. This is what we're going to say about Breonna Taylor. And we actually put together, as one example, a piece where each player read a little bit about Breonna's life and her story and their commitment to finding justice. That was professionally produced. You know what I mean? Like, we did the heavy load and we did the heavy lift, and that's what was pumped out on social. But when they were a part of it, and they get to, you know, sort of use their voices as the delivery of the message, then them sharing that and us sort of amplifying, you know, on our end too. That's really the approach that we've been taking, as to not infringe on their personal side. But there's no doubt, merchandise wise, we sold more Sabrina Ionescu jerseys than we had in probably the last 5 years last season. And with our new jersey this year, I'm literally, you know, waiting for reports on a day-to-day and a week-to-week basis, because with this new brand and this new look, I think we're going to have a ton of success. But that's another area where I really tie the player and their social to like people actually following them and wanting them. Yeah. That's the revenue driver for us.
You're again speaking to the fluid fan. You follow, in the age of the global fan, it was the team, it was the league. The age of the fluid fan, it's the athlete and the team in the league. But increasingly, you follow that athlete wherever they are, and they are a driver of visibility, of revenue. You mentioned the jersey. Maybe you can share, in this 25th season, commemorate that. You've got a pretty cool partnership with Nike.
Yes.
You can explain kind of the HER acronym and what that means, and what you're doing to create some buzz and drive revenue at the end of the day.
Yes, I'm super excited, and I'm obviously biased, because I think New York has the sleekest and the best looking uniforms. But no, across the league, every WNBA team this season, Nike introduced new uniforms, and for the first time, our uniform set, and we don't go like white home and darks away. It's really just whatever the home team wants to wear is what the home team wears. And in this jersey line, you know, where we do have a Rebel jersey, which is representative of each market, sort of something that is unique to that market and ties to that market alone. Ours is an equality jersey. And we also introduced a new black uniform and a new white uniform as well. So I think in this system, it's just, they're fire. Like I can't, there's no other way really to put it. And I think the players feel really proud, you know, to be wearing them. But, you know, Nike did a really amazing job on these particular jerseys, I think.
All right. So I got your email. I'm going to send you my address. I got first dibs. The orange hoodie you still can't get on the market. I mean, talk about merch drops and leaving money. I mean, that's the thing I love about the research we've done. There's like, it's quality over quantity. If the industry could shift away, and we talk a lot about this in the report, get away from just eyeballs and the traditional metrics. Because guess what? Women's sports it's a startup. You're comparing apples to oranges. But if you want to look at women's sports, the Liberty from a potential perspective, and these avid consumers that are freaking doing everything to get the orange hoodie or the new, jersey drop, they're there. You see them, that, I'm sure everyone's calling you like, Keia, help me out. Like, hook me up.
I was just going to say that, how many calls I've received for that orange hoodie. We have some Liberty, and to your point, quality over quantity. Like, we were really intentional and deliberate. Like, we were like pilfering out a piece here and a piece there, not because we didn't want to sell more merch, because we want the cool factor. Like, fans want the things that the players are wearing. Fans want sleek and cool. Like, so we were really paying attention to that, and maybe, foregoing large quantities in some instances, but I think it's important to be deliberate about those things. So we build it, as I want to say it again, like the right way. So it feels authentic, it feels real and tangible. And I think by taking that approach, the numbers will be there, the metrics will be there. It's just about
Yeah. No, I agree with you. The metrics are there. It's shifted. And again, this isn't demand for jersey around an event. This is demand for jersey around a continuum, around an always on, it's a visual. When people wear when you wear something, when you buy the NFT, when this is our own behavior. It's because you want to be part of it. You want to share your fandom. You want it to express who you are. And that to me speaks so much to what you've built both at the league office and now at the Liberty. Like, you're building a lifestyle brand, not just a sport. And that, I think, is really important, because one of my big takeaways is, again, you can constantly compare women's sports to men. They make their money off of just like viewership and statistics and games. And we are big advocates of this community-based monetization model, this always on social future fan. It's more than just sport. It's like, they want the storytelling. They want the access to the Sabrina Ionesco's. Like, what is she doing off the court, not just like on the court? And you get that. I mean, you're building that empire over at the Liberty. Tell me where your thinking's at now. Like, where are you going to head? Where are you going to go, knowing that this market is ready, finally caught up to you, Keia?
Catching up, caught up, whichever way you want to put it. Yeah, I mean, Angela, we just have to continue to build. And I can't say enough about Brooklyn as the backdrop. Just being in the building, like, it was a long time coming for me personally, but more for the fans. So where we go from here is really about exactly what we've already discussed. Like, how are we providing access points and the storytelling and that complete narrative around these amazing players? Because we've got Sabrina, but then you add to that, like, Aditi Richards, Benijah Laney. Like, there are these players that are big forces on the court and new to New York. So I think there's a story to be told there. I'm also incredibly excited because others are starting to tell our story. I don't know if you caught the 144, the ESPN documentary about the bubble season. I'm hearing rumblings that there are other docuseries and documentaries in the works about this league. And I think that's important work, because that's what people fall in love with. When you think about the Olympics, it's those stories that people fall in love with. And those are the sort of tactics and the initiatives that we want to get behind and we want to be a part of, because that's how this continues to flourish. That's how it continues to grow. Again, though, being in the building, like, it's our game, that's our show. So our dance team, and we introduced a new mascot, and what our brand and how our brand comes across, introducing a new app, like, all of those just, have to haves as a part of a sports franchise. We're restarting, we're refreshed. It's all, beginning anew. So my main focus again is fan engagement, growing the fan base. We want to get younger. We want to get hipper. We want to really be that traditional Brooklynite, that Manhattan young professional, the young family, like all of those. What we used to really focus on from a demo standpoint. It's the mindset. It's the movement. It's like, you want to be supporting these women. You want to be there. You have to be there when Saab hits that, that buzzer beater. And that's where, I see this going. Like, I think we're poised. This is a timing thing. This is the right moment. And now we're in the right location. So really it's like, open the gates and let's execute.
Boom. We got the players, we got the building, we got the ownership, we got the leadership in Keia Clarke. We've got society, we've got technology coming in.
Yes.
And the athletes are willing participants and aren't just, let me play ball and go home. They're like, boom, we're going to build this league and lead the way. Again, why I'm so passionate about what you're doing in women's sports, it's like the fluid fan is the women's sports fan. I'll just repeat that. The fluid fan is the women's sports fan. They are women's sports. And if you haven't caught anything in this podcast, to me, that's like the understand what Keia is doing in depth, and you will understand where the future consumer is in all of sport. Because you are building communities, you are leaning into societal shifts, you are using these new platforms in a way that you have to, because you don't have, you know, the easy, lazy, linear that the men's side has. I mean, you got to sell tickets through the community. I mean, again, I just think if you've listened to all my podcasts, we're 50 something in, understand what Keia is doing, because you're on the bleeding edge of all this. And you know, I don't know, I just commemorate you and congratulate you really for being there. I know it's hard work too. And I want to touch on one thing that's separate from women's sports, but more just sports. Like, you're doing this all under a pandemic. So so congratulations.
Thank you.
What has the pandemic taught you, if we shift just a little bit, like,
Yeah.
how has that changed your business in general? And maybe I always like to figure out, like, what are the opportunities coming out of this to do things differently for those that haven't been in your shoes?
Yeah, it's all so brand new, right? None of us could have anticipated this, would have ever anticipated this, and we found ourselves. And I often, joke. Last season was the first time in 15 years that I hadn't seen a live WNBA game, because I didn't go to the bubble. It was a very limited amount of people who could be there, and the entire time and I say we, myself and the cohort of other folks, the CEOs and COOs and team presidents who run the WNBA teams around the country, we were so close during that moment, and just sharing and trying to figure it out day by day. And all the pieces that, we took, and all the learnings that we were coming across, we were sharing with one another, because, it was an all hands on deck type situation. And I would definitely say that, what I learned and what I've taken from it is the power of the virtual space. I think that was where, while we had already admittedly not been where we should have been from a technology standpoint, we had to at that moment. Like, we absolutely had to. So the league's, app run cheer for your team program that they ran was, like a national thing, but locally we went into virtual event mode. The thing that the WNBA fan, that the Liberty fan values most, is access to our players. It's access to events. It's the live events that are games, and then it's all the ancillary events that we did otherwise. And that was the one thing I'm most proud of from that season, which was our ability to still produce and curate these really timely, important conversations. And some of them were light and fun, and some of them were really serious. And maybe they were about, state sanctioned violence, like the deaths of, Ahmaud Arbery or George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. Like, they were real conversations. These were things we would have done in person, but we took it virtual. And
so
that's
you got the scale and again, the impact of, and I personally think that's what, some fans want the layup and the 3-point, and they want to, and some fans want the storytelling of what is Sabrina eating, and others are like, what do you guys represent? I mean, kind of hitting it all on multiple layers. So that's great.
And some of them want a t-shirt.
Want some gear. I hear you.
Want a free t-shirt thrown at them. So, we really were committed to trying to meet the core fan where they were. And it's something that we plan to and want to continue, because we learned that it was a really nice medium for us. I also think, and this is shame on us, but we hadn't had a online store. We didn't have a retail space outside of brick and mortar, outside of game day, until the pandemic happened. And we have exponentially grown our retail business. And it's an entirely new revenue stream that had been neglected for so long. Like, we just weren't selling merch online. If you look across the teams, merch is sold from the league level, but not every team has a team store specific to them. And that's something we introduced, awesome. Silver lining of COVID. And it's something that we are strategically and manipulating every single day, because like I said, it's a new, and sadly, like I said, shame on us, revenue stream. But, it was something that came out of, necessity at this point. But yeah, so many learnings from that time and from that space. And even as we come back, we're being cautious we're being very deliberate about how we handle and deal with and work with fans, and how do we, create moments for hospitality, because we can't just go willy-nilly during the pandemic or as we come out of this thing. But I'm really happy that things are opening up. But it's one of those, like, we're never going to forget this moment. So, the good things that came out of it, we want to continue them, and just, hope we're never here again.
Well, congratulations on the, some groups are crossing their fingers, hoping things abide, if you will. Others are saying, let's lean in and invest and really look deep and figure out how do we do things better. So I'll go online and try to get more merch, and, I'll hit you up for those jerseys. Maybe, I know it sounds like you're trying to keep the supply low so the demand goes up. So maybe keep my fingers crossed that, I can win you over. But Keia, you've been amazing. Before I let you go, I want to get your thoughts. We always close every podcast, Fluid Fan podcast, on innovation and what that means to you. So we'll just jump right in. I'm curious, what does it mean to you? What are your thoughts on when you hear the word innovation and how you approach that topic?
Yeah, I think of it very simply as a new method. Is there a more effective way for us, or more effective idea, or more effective process for us to improve our business? Like, and it across the board, from administrative folks to interns to my senior leadership team, I hope and trust that everyone feels like they can innovate within our company. I think we're small enough and we're on the cutting edge enough for everyone's voice to be heard. But I think of it as a new method, a new way of doing things.
Love it. And I mean, you can say your commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, because I agree, she's awesome. But a person, I'll kind of throw that out there because you kind of have to say that, but I think it's true. She's great. Who's someone in the industry that you look to, you study, or outside of sports even? I'll give you that broad, a tech CEO, someone that you just like, and maybe would read their book if they published one.
Yeah, it's like you're reading my notes, Angela. I think Kathy Engelbert, who just joined the league at probably the most tumultuous time in joining a league, has just faced every single one of these obstacles with such poise and dignity. My answer was going to be not one singular person, though, so it's kind of Kathy related, but I have to give innovation, or most innovative person or persons, to these W players. I mean, gosh, for 24 years, they were showing up, and everybody knows they don't make millions of dollars like the men, and everybody knows they play overseas in the off season, and everybody knows they come from all walks of life and families, and just their ability to have this political, social, impactful summer that was really just a groundswell that had been steadily happening, but it just blew up. I mean, they flipped a Senate seat in Georgia. They brought so much education and advocacy to all of these Black women, quite frankly, that were murdered, and no one even knew. I felt ashamed, as the stories were coming out and the names were being read, and how they lost their lives was being shown for all of the world to see. It was like, wow, like, this is admirable, but it's also like their job is to play basketball. So if that's not a new method or a new way of, like, affecting change or moving the league forward in a way, like, I don't know what is. So I'm cheating. I'm gonna say these W players.
Anytime you say players, I was the
I got you.
You got my back. I got your back.
Yes.
If we as an industry don't see the athletes, not just from athlete-driven media, and they're the channel, everything we talked about, but like, they actually have a lot to contribute. And again, we look at the CBAs, and I was the athlete rep for the IOC for many years, representing athletes globally. If it's an us versus them, you don't win. If it's a win-win, I was thinking of it like the players, the prisoner's dilemma. It's like, can you find the right box? Do you remember that back in high school? It's like, look, let's go into a negotiation, not, zero sum. We can win. So I love that you said players, because a lot of times I don't think players get the same respect, but you're an athlete too, so you get it. All right. What's the most innovative company in sports tech? What's someone that you're interested in paying attention to?
Yeah, I'm paying a lot of attention, ironically, to Twitter sports. I think it's completely innovative what they're doing in the streaming space. Obviously, they have a partnership with us, so I really appreciate that. But just some of the things I've seen pop up and spring up even recently. I don't know if you saw the wearable technology, which is not a new thing, but coupling that with being the juggernaut that they are, the platform that everybody is talking on every single day, and being in this space, I think is really, really interesting, and something that I'm paying close attention to, and how we can use it locally, or, obviously the league has a partnership with them, but that's who I've been most intrigued by, is sort of, this wearable technology and the streaming asset that they've created.
All right, let's wrap it up then. You are not allowed to say the Liberty or your own league, because it's an easy one. But who's the most innovative league, team, or federation? It's obvious. Yes, it's the Liberty, because you're
no. It's not my own league then, technically. I was gonna say the NBA.
Okay. All right. You can say the NBA. That's
technicality, but they're always on the cutting edge. If you've ever been to Tech Summit, or you've ever, if you're watching like the non-fungible tokens and with Top Shot, and they've been in wearable tech forever. And, I just think how, so goes all of sports. Most times it's being led by the NBA, in my opinion.
All right. Keia Clarke, you're awesome. I love that you've been there from the beginning. You played, you're in the C-suite now, building I want you to win on the court, for the record, because you've been there. Liberty's been there from the beginning, just for the record, of the W. You got a lot of inertia behind the deals with, Google and Amazon. You've got a new commissioner. You personally have a new owner in the Tsai family, and a new leader in Keia Clarke. So a lot of things go in your favor. If you haven't read the Fan Project, read the report. Everything you're building aligns with that. So I just want to say thank you for sharing your wisdom, your advice, your thoughts on women's sports, and specifically women's basketball, and specifically what you're doing. If you haven't been to the Barclays Center, check it out. It's freaking awesome. Are you guys full capacity yet?
We're not full capacity yet. We're growing. We're growing with each game.
All right. You'll get there soon.
We're getting there.
But thank you so much for your time. And by the way, you're on our women's leadership board. You are one of a select few that are just, again, we believe, really leading the way. So thanks for everything. And any parting thoughts to our listeners before we wrap?
No, my absolute pleasure to be here with you, Angela. It's almost like you were reading my notes. You said a little bit earlier, and lead the way. And that's really like what I truly think should be done from New York. Like, New York leads in so many ways, and that's where we're going. That's where we're heading, and so excited to be here. So humbled to be able to lead this team. But really, I'm just looking forward to, building on what this next 25 looks like while we celebrate these past 25.
All right. Keeping my fingers crossed for the season, and your star, and Sabrina, and the rest of the team, by the way. You got your big gun, but it takes a team to win a championship.
Sure does.
Right. But thank you again for being on the Fluid Fan podcast, and wish you all the best of luck in the rest of your season.
Have a great one. Thank you.
So big thanks again to Keia Clarke. You heard her, for joining me on today's show. Keia and the Liberty are absolutely killing it so far this season. You got to stay tuned. Check out what they're up to. So great to hear how the WNBA's 25th season is off and running, and how Keia and the Liberty have gotten super creative with the new Nike Her Jersey campaign. Her marketing mindset is second to none. You heard that. And the momentum of women's sports continues to build. I'm excited to see how she's able to capitalize on behalf of the Liberty. CEO, she can run the Liberty. She can do some big things for them, but also women's basketball and women's sports as a whole. So great to get her feedback on this market and on the Fan Project. Want to close by thanking my team at Sports Innovation Lab, specifically my producer, Jack Barlow. You guys are awesome, keeping our fans, our customers up to date on what's going on in the market. We've been around for 4.5 years, and our data, our insights, our research, hopefully are pushing the puck forward, helping everyone. So thanks, Jack and the team. Thank you to my listeners. You've made it this far. If you haven't already, subscribe to our show, iTunes, SoundCloud, Anchor, Spotify, wherever the heck you are. Please subscribe. Give us some nice stars. Tell us what you like. Hey, and even what you don't like. I'm an athlete. I can take it. I like that feedback. But once again, if you haven't downloaded the Fan Project, go to our website, sportsilab.com. I encourage you. It's literally the future of sports, not women's sports, sports. Women's sports, just figure it out sooner. There's a big opportunity here for the industry to better understand community-based monetization models. So check that out. If you want to learn more, again, go on our site, go on at sportsilab.com. My personal handle is at Angela Ruggiero. That's Ruggiero. That's it. Tell me what you want going forward. I'll see you next time on the Fluid Fan Podcast.